morning. Hello. My name is Lorna. I'm an IBM developer advocate in the Cloud Data Services division. I've been in my job 3 weeks. That's the first time I've ever said that on stage. I'm here because I'm really excited about webhooks. And actually, you're excited about webhooks as well. You are seeing them in many places. The classic example is the notifications that you get in your chat channels. I know Slack is the cool thing these days, but I am also a big fan of IRC. I use it with all my open source projects. I'm using a Hubot to receive webhooks and bring those notifications into the conversation where the humans are. Webhooks is all about moving data. It's about getting data from one place to another. And maybe you think I'm describing an API here. Well, let's go look at APIs first. APIs work like this. The client asks the server for data. Please, may I have some data? And it's always that polite. And the server says, here is your data, unless there isn't any, in which case the server says, nope. In comparison, webhooks work the other way. The server starts the conversation and kind of arrives with a, ta-da, here is some data. And the client responds, thanks, with a smiley. In HTTP, we spell the smiley as like a 200. You can think of it as a smiley. And that's cool, but we've seen now those little interactions very much in isolation. So we're omitting something really important, which is how does this work over time? Many software inventions work brilliantly well until you consider what happens to them over time. And this is no exception. So let's consider these over time, starting with APIs, time running left to right for you. First of all, the client makes an API call to the server and says, may I have some data? And the server says, no. And sometime later, may I have some data? And the server says, yeah, here's some data. And later it says, may I have some data? And the server says, nope. And you get the picture, right? There's just a whole lot of nope. Goes on, we're chattering, nothing's really happening. There are some adaptations of this pattern which improve it. So we'll sometimes keep that connection open for a while. So if you have the need to send quite a lot of data, like quite regularly, so if you're going to do lots and lots of sends to the same client, it can sometimes be worth keeping that network connection open. It depends on the shape of your communication, because often, if it's just the occasional ping, if it's only when you, let's say, release to master, then we probably don't want to hold a connection open for that. Compare this with what happens when we do the same thing with the webhooks. The only conversation that happens here is the server sends the data and the client sends back the thank you and the smiley. There's much less chatter, but we're still achieving the same thing. The big difference here is that we had to do some pre-arrangement to make this happen. The server already knows where to send that data to. In the API model, the client can just access the API. Yeah, maybe there's some sign up, maybe you need to authenticate, something like that. But there isn't the same level of pre-arrangement that we have with webhooks, so you need to set this up in advance. This is a screenshot which you may or may not be able to read from GitHub's sign up. And the information GitHub asks for, GitHub are a really good example of webhooks. I love the way that they implement theirs. They ask you for a few key pieces of information. They ask you for the endpoint you would like the data to go to. So where the post of the webhook payload should end up. On development machines, this can be hard. You need a tool called ngrok. They're only letting me talk for 10 minutes, so ask me about that over lunch. There's a content type, application JSON. Most webhooks are just JSON. GitHub gives you a choice. You can get a form post. There's also a secret, which is another thing I like about GitHub. Webhooks in general can be a little bit Internet of Things in their approach to security. And therefore, GitHub gives you the opportunity to enter a secret here and then check that that secret arrives with the payload. so you can filter out things that would otherwise denial of service your servers. You also get the choice of which events you want to subscribe to. GitHub makes this easy. You can have push, which is just any kind of commit, or everything. And if this is suddenly sounding very familiar where you subscribe and then information gets sent to you, yes, I am describing PubSub over HTTP. That is all webhooks are, and they are super cool. Let's drill into a webhook. I had this great idea that I would pick the smallest webhook that GitHub sends, put it on the screen and walk you through it. And I got this, which is creating a wiki page. It's relatively small, but only relative to everything else. There's 111 more lines not shown on this slide. I am not above shrinking my font size to fit onto a screen, but this is not going to work. So let me give you an overview. This webhook, there is a new page on the wiki. I am notifying you of it. Includes information about the page, the repository it's in, the owner of that repository, so that can be a user or an organization, and also the user who did this action. There's a lot of hypermedia here, so there's a lot of API endpoints where you can go to get more information about any one of these things. But, as you can guess from the 111 more lines, it's fairly verbose. This is normal for webhooks because it's one of those things. You test it with 3 users. Maybe you test it with 3,000 users. Everything's cool. Then it goes live. You've got 3 million users. You webhook something to them with a really minimal payload, collection of users, and you only send that user hypermedia. Every one of those 3 million subscribers then immediately calls back an API request for every user in the collection. You just caused your own thundering herd problem. So that is why the webhook payloads are verbose and should be. You want to hit 80% of the use cases by including nested data. We also normally use these between servers, so we're not so worried about the size of the data that we send as we would be perhaps in mobile. Here's just the owner chunk. So it's not even the whole owner chunk, it's most of the owner chunk. And you can see from this, I've got the user's login, so I can display their display name. I've got a link to their avatar, and I've also got, as well as the URL, which is call this API endpoint to get all the user data, I've got their HTML URL, so I can link to their GitHub page. I can display this in a user-friendly way. This is all the information that I need. On the other end, if you're receiving these webhooks, there are a few tips that I would like to quickly share, mostly through my own bad experience. When you are receiving webhooks, do not hold the connection open while you process the incoming webhook. Okay? Make sure you've got it, store it, make sure you've stored it, and then just send that smiley. Get it, store it, ack it. Probably put it in a queue, process it later. But don't start trying to validate or mess about with things as they come in. Just accept and store and accept and store. And that gives you the ability then to scale your system, to retry or validate or whatever you need for your use case. That's just a little tip from some things I may or may not have done wrong in the past. The webhooks, the APIs, these are what wire our world together. We expect, particularly our hosted tools, to talk to one another. This is how we glue our workflows together. We don't buy in with a single groupware that does everything. We just pick and choose the best tools, and we expect to be able to put them together. And most of the time, we don't need to work with code. I've given you some advice for if you're building this yourself, publishing yourself, receiving yourself, but you don't need to write code for this. One of my favorite tools is Zapier, and what that does is it gives you the ability to basically wire events together. So one thing happens, and you can respond to it with another response. So maybe a new email arrives to a support inbox, email inbox. You can create a Zapier, right? The marketing department thought hard about that, I'm sure. You can zap the new email and turn it into a ticket in your bug tracker. Maybe the developers would rather use GitHub issues, but the project managers would rather use Basecamp. You can set up zaps to keep those in sync or to send important information across between the two. This all works on webhooks. When you commit and your build server responds, it's all about webhooks. Webhooks are quite frankly awesome. I love them. I hope that you love them a little bit more now too. Thanks for listening.